Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, one of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. Back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast. This is episode number 395 for what should have been the 13th of July, 2025. But due to scheduling conflicts and family and other stuff, errands, etc., we moved the show to tonight. And even then, it was supposed to have been at 9:30, I think, Eastern time. And because I completely brain dumped because my schedule got changed, I got off my routine. When my event for tonight got canceled, I said, "Oh, hey, that's great. I can download EA College Football 26 and I can put in a couple games because I don't have a podcast tonight." Forgetting that I actually did have a podcast tonight. So we are live.
Seems like a perfectly reasonable excuse, right? Like if you're gonna miss talking about video games, at least it was for video games.
Yay, verily. And there we are. Here with me, as always, I have my stalwart partners in crime. Number one, Mr. DBQ Hams. How you doing, DBQ?
I'm good. Let's keep on rolling. We got lots to talk about.
And Mr. Towmaster 99. How you doing, Tow?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here.
Very good, very good. So without much further ado, let's get to it. I think I might have said that already. Anyway, starting with segment one for tonight, our main gamer experience stories for the last week. I've been playing Death Stranding 2 on the beach, amongst other things. How to talk about what my experience and what I've been playing and get through quickly. So I put the game down for quite a while I was playing other stuff, and I came back to it this week. I'm still playing it in a way that largely avoids combat. There's some combat that the game will crowbar you into, where it won't give you an option. In one instance, I took out like one of the people almost by accident as I was trying to get by. I have gained access to the first vehicle in the game, which is like a reverse tri motorcycle or whatever. Kind of like one of the ones you see on the road today. I forget what those things are called, scorpions or something like that. But it's immensely fun. It makes reversal so great. It's interesting because it's a contrast to how I'm dealing with vehicles in Halo Infinite, which I'll talk about a little bit later on tonight. But it's a lot of fun. And actually, it's a lot of fun because the vehicles, at least that vehicle, they do lots of weird things that you don't expect. And so the vehicle has like a hop function, so you can like bounce the suspension on it, and that actually makes you able to do different things. Like at one point, I made a jump between like two buildings that were in close proximity that like had ledges, because even though I kind of got the bike onto it and kind of got it stuck, I was able to just kind of bounce Jimmy my way from one ledge over to the other, despite the fact that I had these lips to get over. And then I found a wall break when I got to the other side that allowed me to just ride the trike off the side of the building. So,
was there a vehicle in the first one?
Yes, there were. I didn't play the first one enough to get access to a lot of those vehicles, so there's several vehicles in this one, from what I have seen and understand. So, yeah, it continues to be a lot of fun. It continues to have all of the, like, the more stuff you build, the more likes you get, and the more that kind of distanced social algorithm still kind of pops for you and makes it kind of interesting as a meta. We talked about Expedition 33 earlier this year and how there's a lot of emotional drum beats in there. There's a lot of emotional drum beats obviously in when you talk about a PlayStation game. In The Last of Us Part 2, there are big emotional drum beats in this game very early in the game. So I'm still in like the first 6 hours or so, and there's stuff that's happened that's just kind of taking my breath away. I mentioned the first time that like I was into the game and I was getting a lot of the, okay, this is the same stuff that you went through last time. And I was like, okay, but there's clearly like a mystery. Clearly something has changed. Clearly something has altered the state of status quo in this world. Kind of like a comic book reboot. And I've hit that point where we're kind of the world has kind of been rebooted as you know it from a Death Stranding perspective. And you've been given like a new mystery and a new challenge. So I'm having immense fun with it. The game's, again, graphically just incredibly gorgeous, amazingly so. The voice acting and mocap performances are crazy. There's a little bit of like Asian to Western like translation where the scripting isn't great, and I think there's a lot of efforts to kind of script in like these sub messages which don't always come through. So there's a little jank kind of from that perspective, but overall, I'm having a great time. There's mysteries and pockets and like things to like when you take on like side missions or requests for aid that kind of reveal more of this world to you and allow you to do things like expand the chiral network beyond like the core missions that Fragile and some of the base leaders give you. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm continuing to plug my way through it.
Are you still in Mexico?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so you've moved to the southern hemisphere then.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. So are you finding, just in listening to other kind of analysis and narratives around this, people are seem to be either really invested, those that are enjoying it are really either invested in kind of the Kojima-esque aspects of the story or the mechanics and the kind of the more of the gameplay mechanics and just kind of being out there as a porter. And where do you find yourself? What's pulling you back into it and keeping it in your rotation?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. I've actually been giving a lot of thought to this week about like what kind of anchors people into games or seats games for people, or how do people kind of adjudicate like games that they like and games that they don't. And I think we've talked about on this show a lot how, at least for me, well, for all of us, I think it's very often the meta. It's very often this kind of not even a side quest, right? Side quests are like a thing. Side quests are a thing with a definitive beginning and a definitive end, and an experience in and of themselves. Metas are like something almost more subtle than a mini game, right? They are mechanical loops that you go through that often provide kind of a zen for you in the game. And sometimes they're not even necessarily workflows, right? They're just a simple fact of like hiking in Death Stranding is a meta, right? And sometimes there's an analog to it in the real world, like hiking, like I mentioned. So I think a lot of it is still the meta of Death Stranding, and it's still there's almost kind of a little like city builder meta to it as you go around and erect structures throughout the world. Like now I'm dropping generators like along the way. And I've built timefall shelters and post office boxes. So you're building this whole like network of things. And often these are territories that you're going to pass back through, and then people like them because they use them and they find them helpful. I have come across other porters requests for aid, and sometimes, and I think they're just dropping these things like just because, not because they really need it. So in some cases, like they're asking for weapons, and so I leave like the little pistol that you get given in the game, because I'm like, okay, I can always go fabricate another one of those later. I'm like, I don't really think they need this pistol because presumably they have the same pistol that I have because they be right, but it's just the matter that they asked for help and you gave it to them. So for me, I think it's a lot of the meta still. It is almost like the Metal Gear Solid effect of like when like the first, technically second, Metal Gear Solid came to the original PlayStation, and I would pull all-nighters and stay up way late to play that game simply because I was just trying to get to the next like autocon right exchange.
Oh yeah, you were there for the story beats as someone who marathoned this with college roommates during a finals. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so there's a little of that. There's a little of like I'm just playing just to get to like that next cutscene, right? Or where the world expands. There's a little bit of, sometimes the cutscenes go on like a very long time. Because they're almost like movie sequences.
In a Kojima game? Is how
yeah, and and you're locked into them. So there's a little bit of that. But it's kind of one of those things. There was some other game that did this earlier this year. Maybe Expedition 33. It kind of rides it right up to that point, like walks it right up to that line where you're almost like, okay, this is enough. Like this has overstayed its welcome, and then it backs off away from it. So for me, it's probably still largely those metas. that are in the game. Just being given like incrementally new tools and new things to go build, and the way that they interact in the world and change things for you, and go, oh, maybe what I'd really like to do is put generators on like either side of this black zone where there's no chiral network, so that you can charge your vehicle before you try and ford the river, and then you can charge it immediately afterwards, because when you're fording the river, it drains your battery at a faster rate. And so yes, the town is in visible distance and you could probably make it, but like in a world where lots of us suffer from mobile device battery anxiety, right? It like for no reason, right? We have plenty of battery to get to our next thing, but lots of us will see the battery dip below like 38%, and we'll be like, no, 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 time out, right? So maybe people will experience that in the game too, like when your vehicle battery is draining. So there's things like that, and I think that's what's continuing to kind of keep me engaged. I'm definitely more interested in going back to the game for that aspect than I like am wrapped around the axle about like bullying my way through the game to get through the story to make sure nobody spoils it for me, right? Which is starkly different than my approach to Expedition 33, where I was like, no, have to get through this before, right? Some yum yum, right, right, gives up the goods on Twitter or something, and I see it across my timeline. So that is what I have been playing. And then DBQ, you and I have had some crossover because I kind of already spilled the beans that I was playing EA College Football 26 tonight. You have also been playing it. You had been able to play it during the pre-flight, whatever that was, and I guess a beta test, closed beta test.
Yeah, I played it earlier this summer during one of the betas, and then with EA Play, getting the 10-hour free trial, which I've kind of chewed my way through about half of that at this point. How much did you play? Did you play last year's? Did you play 25?
I did.
Okay.
And I'll kind of tee you up a little bit because I don't have a lot to talk about the game. My main huge difference this year is last year I was into we just talked about metas. I was into the meta of like recruiting, right? And going through that loop, and being very intense about digging through it. This year I took the same route that I've started to take with almost all sports games that I play, which is I just let the computer do it because like I don't know that I care about it as much. How are you approaching it?
I have had the chance to kind of play around with the dynasty mode. So, taking a team, doing a little bit of the recruiting. I haven't finished a season there to see. I think one of the big kind of changes that I've heard from people and that the developers talked about as well is really kind of reflecting the kind of dynamic and tumultuous transfer portal. That a lot more athletes enter into the transfer portal than they did last year. Last year, I built up I played 9 seasons of it last year in an online dynasty, and by year 2 or 3 had kind of built up a powerhouse that was in the top 10, top 5 most of the time, and never really had to worry too much about the transfer portal. Even when I had backups. This year, it definitely seems like a transfer portal, the threat of people transferring is a lot higher, and that there's a lot more turnover in terms of teammates coming through the transfer portal in the dynasty mode, which is, I guess it makes it difficult in terms of a team building, but also is very kind of realistic in terms of kind of the state of NIL and NCAA athletics at this point as well, is that people move a lot more, and that if they're not getting playing time, or they're getting playing time and starring on a lower team, they're going to be looking for a step up in terms of profile. So I like there's not a whole lot that seems to be different in the actual recruiting aspect. The stars and the different ways you spend your hours each week in terms of how you target players for recruiting. One of the things I have noticed that's different is that the proximity of where you're trying to bring somebody in from. Like, so once you get to a certain level of familiarity with a player and their interest with you, you can bring them, you can schedule a visit, right? You can schedule a campus visit, and depending on who the team you're playing, you may get different degrees of a boost if you win. That if it's a rival game or a big high profile national game versus kind of a second string team that you're definitely expected to win. But one of the things I've found is that if the player you're recruiting is coming from somewhere close, it's in your pipeline or geographically close, the cost for that visit is significantly less. So last year it was just a standard 40 hours. You have 65 hours basically to spend, or last year you had 65 hours to spend on each player, and that, or as a max, and a visit would be 40 points. But now I had one visit that was 15 because they were geographically close, and I had another that was 40. So there is a little bit of dynamic there in terms of what it, of that recruiting aspect. Some differences, I think that the back end aspects, there's a little more wear and tear, and trainers, I think, wait, that's Madden. I think I'm getting those mixed up. But the on field play still feels good. It is, but also I'm finding that some of the same cheese plays that worked last year still work this year. Like some of them have been addressed, not all of them. I think it's still difficult. It was easy to either get burned by the computer or burn the computer in kind of deep streaks, in terms of deep routes with fast receivers. You definitely have a little more. One of the nice things that you do have a little more flexibility pre-snap, so you can do a few more stunts. You can do substitutions. The substitutions take place in kind of the next play. So one of the things that was a hindrance in the last game was the only way to do a substitution was to go through and manually change your depth chart. You couldn't do formation substitutions. Like, if you had a bruising back that you wanted to put in an I formation or in a 2-back formation, and you had a fast receiving back that you wanted to play in your shotgun formation, you didn't have that option to just kind of set those formations. This year you do, and which is the case in Madden as well. So there's a little more aspect there. I've also had the chance to play around with the Road to Glory mode. So this is the kind of single player story mode aspect of it, where last year you picked you could be a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, linebacker, or another defensive player. And you're kind of locked into that. One of the challenges and knocks against this mode last year was that the play calling aspect was really limited until you progressed really far. There's still some of that, but one of the things that they've added, which has actually been kind of fun to play around with, is that you start in high school. Where last year you just kind of here are the teams that are interested in you based on what kind of star ranking you decide to start with. And this year you start in a high school. You can make a high school, but then you have it kind of works on the recruiting end from the player end, that you get to target what you think your top 10 schools are. You can get offers from schools. You don't get visits, but you can get scholarship offers. You can see who else they're recruiting. So if I played a quarterback and I could see was getting recruited by Vanderbilt, but they had also had another 3-star recruit quarterback that had already committed. And so my playing time might have looked good in terms of the depth chart, but they had already recruited somebody. And so you can start kind of making some of those. And then in high school, you don't play full games. You kind of play moments where you're given different challenges, and you get to kind of choose 4 different challenges for each game. And depending on which challenges you choose, they kind of can be multipliers, different degrees of multipliers for each school that you're interested in, so that it gives you, like, this may be a 1.5 in terms of the points. And so you get assessed a number, like different teams have kind of thresholds of interest towards you. Like Hawaii as a 1-star had only 1,900 hours or minutes of tape that they needed, where a Big Ten team needed 4,900. So there's some differences there, but then like that was fun. That kept me up way late one night, kind of playing through, getting through high school, and kind of making a declaration to commit. But then it dumps you still back into a very similar kind of menu-based mode that was last year's once you're in college, and you've got to balance training and athletics, and training and academics. And so that's interesting. And I think, they've done better in that way in terms of some of those positions. Some of the positions, certainly it seems like the defensive positions are pretty difficult because you get graded on your entire defense, not just your performance. So, but yeah, I have not purchased it. I have almost pulled the trigger multiple times, and I'm still not quite sure because there's a lot that feels really similar after spending a good chunk of time with last year's. But I also am seeing some of the smaller differences and appreciating them.
Feels like a slight graphical glow up as well.
Yes. Oh, I think the graphics definitely have taken a polish, and the presentation certainly takes a polish as well. There's a lot more in terms of the entrances. They've added a whole lot more songs to different stadiums. There's different celebrations that are more unique, more rivalry trophies. Some of the things that make college football as unique as it is. Certainly, they've expanded that aspect of it this year. So I think for a second year outing, it's really solid. I find it better and stronger than last year, but it's also a whole lot like last year. This is the challenge of an annualized sports franchise.
Yeah, some improvements in the animations as well. There's some on-field stuff that I felt like the tackling was a little better, particularly when you're tackling like from angles. And then a lot of seems like things have been added to. Like I'm playing a very small school. I'm playing like the Liberty Flames from Liberty University down in Lynchburg, Virginia. And like there's some goofy little like hand sign that apparently those fans do that like that's included in the game. And I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have been there last year.
That's neat. Yeah. I think that the tackling animations are better. There's many times last year where it felt like you kind of got locked into animations, and that feels definitely a little more fluid and physics based this year than kind of animation based as it was last year.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
It was this year's and actually even last year's, I guess. Is it only current gen, or was it last gen too?
It's only current gen and only console. So there's no PC version, and it's just Xbox Series and PlayStation 5.
Okay. And just to bring that point up, I'll put it in the show notes, but in the DBQ, you're playing on the Xbox Series X. I'm playing on the PlayStation 5 Pro.
And that's good to hear that the Pro looks really good, which is great.
Yeah. Tao, you also have been playing a sports game, interestingly enough.
Yes, so I finally have jumped into Rematch, and I'm completely hooked. That's my new go-to game as of late. Actually, first game that I've played outside of the Switch 2 in the past month or so that the Switch has been out. Switch 2 has been out. Finally pulled me off of there. Well, I'm still going back to it, but so I'm playing this on PC. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, playing this on PC through Game Pass because it's available on Game Pass. And I was actually looking for it on Switch 2, but it's not on there yet. Hopefully one day, I would definitely buy it on there so I can kind of have it, a little portable game. Even though it is, as far as I know, it's only online that you can play. Maybe custom matches you can do locally, but basically
they've put out a roadmap where they're talking about bots and more training things, but that's not in there quite yet. Yeah.
So I was doing a little bit of tutorial too, right before the show. Actually, we're setting that stuff up just because I did like and I guess that's kind of one of the sticking points for me. The tutorial they give you at the beginning, where it's a tutorial, but there's actually, I guess, kind of like a story of sorts. Basically, like little cutscenes they kind of interweave in between the tutorial as you go through it. And that was kind of throwing me off because you learn a couple things or a few things, and then they would go into these story beats. I'll do that quotes. And then literally you're sitting there for like a minute or two, and then you get to go do another, passing or whatever they're trying to teach you. So that was kind of throwing me off because I'd rather them have either done the story stuff before or after, like doing all the tutorial. Because I was like, okay, like what am I supposed to do now when I actually got into a game? Because they were just kind of going back and forth between the two. So it's kind of, I was like confusing me, but I would just kind of forget, and I was like, like I wish they would have just kind of thrown it all at once at some point. But once I got past all that and I actually started to play, I was starting to get used to it. So it kind of more arcadey than like a simulation, like FC or the old FIFAs of old. So you can do 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5. And I like the 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 more than the 3-on-3, which is kind of odd for me because usually I kind of like 3-on-3 is usually my sweet spot. But I feel when you're on 3-on-3, like if you have two people that are not, very good, or maybe they're just kind of learning too, that it's a lot harder to kind of, I don't want to say carry them, but it's harder for you to win a match because you have two people down. But at least if you have 4-on-4, maybe you have that third person, that you can at least kind of rely on, or 4, depending if you're doing 5-on-5. So I kind of like the higher modes, the higher number modes better. Another little sticking point is the passing. It seems a little wonky. I don't know. DB, did you play this at all? I thought you had played this a little bit, or no?
No, I haven't played it.
Okay.
I've watched some online streams of it. I've listened to people talk about it, and they agree with you in terms of that 4-on-4 and 5-on-5 definitely feel, I don't know, more complete and actually better in terms of learning mechanics of the game.
Yeah. But yeah, just the passing seems really weird. So when you pass, and even when you shoot, you get a few seconds that you can actually move the reticle around, so you can actually aim. But when you're shooting, you can see the reticle clearly, like it's fairly visible. When I'm passing though, I sometimes I don't see an indicator of where I can pass to, and I don't know if that's on purpose or if there's just some weird glitch when I'm playing for some reason. And sometimes I because you're supposed to and I think maybe it's just because I'm playing on mouse and keyboard, and I tried both mouse and keyboard and controller. And I was thinking, well, maybe just because I'm a mouse, it's a little bit more sensitive. Maybe I'm not seeing like the indicator, where you can kick, for a pass. But even when I was playing on controller, like I couldn't see anything. Like I'm just blindly kicking to the right or left or straight, whatever I'm trying to do. And every once in a while too, I'll just kick backwards, like for no apparent reason, even though I'm facing forward. I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on. So, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more frequently enough where it's just kind of annoying, just because I'm like, what's going on? So I don't know if it's something I'm doing. I've watched a couple of videos, and it looks like, even in those videos, when I was watching those, like there's no indicator of like where you can actually pass to. So I don't know if it's just like you just got to visually, okay, I got to turn my person, to the left or right, or whichever way I want to, pass to. I'm assuming it seems kind of weird, but I mean, other than that, I'm really, like I said, I'm really enjoying the game because it's like it's my go-to now. I think after you get past level 5, you can start doing ranked. So I've been doing a lot of ranked matches now. I'm still in bronze tier, so I think I'm bronze 2 now. I finally clawed my way out of bronze 3 where I started. So I'm moving up the ranks a little bit slowly, but yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. Obviously, like I said, I'm all playing all online. There is a season pass. or like a battle pass thing, or whatever they call it in this one. I haven't bought that yet. There's a bunch of free tiers though. You can get, backgrounds and banners and stuff to customize your profile. But then they give you, every once in a while, they'll give you like a clothing item too. So for your character, or like a different kind of facial feature or body feature or something like that. Because it's pretty good customization actually for kind of a non-simulation game, I thought. So, but yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it so far.
Are you playing just with random people, or have you played in a group where you've used mics and coordinated a little bit more?
No, yeah, I'm just playing with random people right now. It's probably the first game in a while where I actually I hear a lot of people on the mic, even with the randoms, because usually I don't hear anybody when I'm playing. But yeah, there's actually a lot of people that I will actually talk in here, which is actually kind of nice. And I can see, like, if you're on even in a group of 3, like if you have mics, it's going to be a way better experience, because you can tell somebody, hey, there's somebody back of you, because you can do kind of like a slide kick, and they'll pop the ball away from you if if someone's close enough to you, or just you can kind of position people a little bit more than if you're just playing with randoms. So it's actually kind of nice.
All right, very cool. We are trying to keep things moving along tonight since we're so late. So we will go ahead and proceed on to segment 2, our main news headlines. So this first news story over on Nintendo Life by Liam Doolin. Donkey Kong Bonanza director acknowledges performance drops. We prioritized fun and playability. The game's director, Donkey Kong Bonanza, is shaping up to be an excellent outing for DK, but the recent previews did highlight some performance concerns. The game's director, Kazuya Takahashi, has now reportedly acknowledged these issues in a chat with the Spanish outlet La Vanguardia, seemingly confirming these frame rate drops will be in the final build during more destructive moments of the game. For Nintendo, it was instead apparently about prioritizing fun and replayability. Although there will be some slight drops, as Takahashi mentions, the overall experience is still smooth. And so theoretically, this game, I haven't read deeply into it. I'm assuming that this game targets 60 frames per second. On handheld, you do have VRR, and there is a belief that you also have LFC. And so hopefully things will remain smooth, even though they may be slower. On the TV, you don't have VRR through the HDMI pass through out of the dock. So, you may see some good old fashioned stutter, maybe, or slowing down of items on the screen. I haven't dug into videos to see if that happens in exactly that manner. I know that I was a person who was very loud on record, and I still am today, that I would have preferred 60 frames per second on Starfield versus the 30 frames per second that we got on console for the design trade-offs that it was made for. My feeling was that the reasons we were given for that game being 30 frames per second on console did not equate to things that I was wrapped around the axle about in the world, and I would have preferred 60 frames per second. In this instance, there's because this is a smaller game in scope, I'm not as wrapped around the axle about the things that I'm not getting. How about you guys, Tao? Any concerns about frame rate? I suspect that this may also mean what is more pertinent today and impactful sometimes is frame pacing and frame rate timing. Any concerns about the performance of this game and you playing it on Switch 2?
No, not really. I mean, I can understand like why this is coming up, and obviously because obviously Switch 2 is more powerful, but still, it's not it's not a Xbox Series X or PS5 Pro or PC, obviously. But and with the destructibility, yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be some slowdown. It's kind of that, like, even with Minecraft. Even though it's it's voxels and these lower graphics, but it's still you're destroying the environment and reconstructing it, which obviously is not takes a lot on the hardware. So, but I'm not too worried about it. I don't know, like yeah, you've seen in these videos and the previews and stuff where he's kind of like digging or busting through the ground or through walls and stuff. And I don't know if everything's destructible or if it's just going to be like certain areas. I don't know if that's really talked about. I haven't really looked into it too much. I'm probably just going to pick it up just because it's a new game, and it's a Donkey Kong game that I haven't played a Donkey Kong game in probably since the original Donkey Kong Country, probably. But back in the day, I never really played any of the sequels, so I just want to pick it up just to play it. So I don't really have any concerns myself. I don't know if DB, if you've seen anything.
Haven't really seen video of what this looks like. I mean, it's not that surprising given the destructibility. I think what will be interesting is how prevalent this is. If this is in any of the destructibility that we've kind of seen in previews, or if this is like really heavy destructibility, that if you are throwing a lot of items on screen, you've really destroyed one of the mountains that you're punching your way through, that what's the threshold where we do see that slowdown. And if it's a kind of an extreme case of people trying to push the limits of destructibility, or if it's something that is going to come up in the middle of a boss fight, I think that's going to feel different to me as well.
I think you mentioned it at the beginning of your statement. I'm not sure if you stuck with it though, but I think also the frequency, right? Like, is this happening every 5 or 10 minutes, or is it just like in these isolated instances where, like you said, you're in a boss fight or you're in a major like mini game where like the whole like point is like destroying at large scale, right, the level or the environment. So we will see how it goes. Next news story is over on Video Games Chronicle, or VGC, by Andy Robinson. EA-backed car culture site winds down as Need for Speed shelved. EA-backed car culture site Speed Hunter says it's winding down operations after the publisher allegedly decided to shelve its Need for Speed series. That's according to photojournalist and longtime contributor Matthew Everingham, who posted on Instagram that the site was on ice some 17 years after it was founded. Speed Hunters is on ice. EA shelved Need for Speed, and that means no more funding for the site, he wrote. Grateful for everything, the trips, the stories, the lifelong mates. Now, the notion that Need for Speed is shelved is a little bit of, platforming off of things people have heard and things people have seen, which I accept. Speed Hunters hadn't been dated for several months. This is also because people are converging what's going on with Speed Hunters with the fact that the Criterion team has moved divisions. So a few months back, EA split up into EA Sports and the Electronic Arts division. I think Criterion would have wound up in the Electronic Arts division anyway, because Need for Speed is not a sports game. However, I think maybe more importantly, Criterion, I think, has been moved underneath the umbrella that Vince Zampella oversees as the new general manager of the entire Battlefield series. Now, supposedly, what I haven't been able to tease apart is there were Need for Speed people, and then there were people who were working on Battlefield, I thought, or at least maybe that was the premise. It could be potentially that the entire studio is supporting Battlefield, but the main thing is it's questionable, right? And even I will admit that what's going to happen with Need for Speed, because it was kind of they would go and do their Battlefield stuff. There would be maybe some smaller team toiling away on Need for Speed, and then the larger team would come back right once Battlefield had launched. I don't think I don't think they had as much of a burden in terms of maintenance and O&M once they had kind of built all the vehicular stuff. And then they would come back and work Need for Speed, and then you would crank out, like the last Need for Speed. I can't remember. It wasn't Underground. It was Unbound.
Unbound. Yep. 22.
So I think the main thing that I'm concerned about is it, and understand that I feel while I don't feel the headline should have said Need for Speed has been shelved, because that hasn't been released officially. Deep down, I feel that Need for Speed has been shelved. And so this conflates for me with a lot of what I see going on in the racing space, which is Need for Speed shelved. Codemasters no longer doing a WRC/dirt game. And Turn 10 being scaled down to the point where I'm assuming that the only people that are left are the engine people who were building like the hardcore physics component of the engine, and have been scaled down to the point where from a scope, it would be impossible for that team to take on the scope to produce a whole game. So I think
you don't lose 50% of your staff and spool up another high profile engine.
Right.
Yep.
So I believe what's going on is that team is just going to now be the physics engine people, and Playground Studios is going to be responsible for making the game, whatever Forza is. But the problem is that Playground is working on Fable as their priority, and yes, they have multiple teams and maybe larger people. But the point is that, and this all goes to Lord and Masters could only be focused intensely and as a critical path and priority on so many moving parts at one time, and they're probably hyper focused on like the primary objective, which is getting Fable out. So there seems to have been a large downscale in the space. Kyloton, who came off the WRC license, did Test Drive Unlimited, Solar, and that game has not done well. So here I am worried that the biggest, most prolific people in the racing space maybe have been kind of swept off the table by a mixture of multiple dynamics. Tao, I know, I'm sorry, it feels like I'm skipping UDB, but Tao, I know you play at least some racing games, at least casually, even though you don't get into the hardcore sim stuff. Any concern out of this news story for you in your ability to get to games and content of that nature, and whether or not it's still going to be coming?
I mean, not really for Need for Speed. I haven't played a Need for Speed in a long time. I can't even remember the last one I had played. It's probably at least two, probably like 3 generations ago of consoles. So, but I mean, it just stinks because I do, when I did play Need for Speed, I mean, I always had a good time with it. And I was also reading here near the end of the article. I think it was near the end of the article. There was the previous developers, I guess, are Ghost Games now, or no, I'm sorry, they're EA Gothenburg, but it doesn't really say what they're working on now or if they're working on anything. So
They're
I
not
don't.
working on a primary game; they're a support studio now. So
Okay, so they're
they
just
won't be
supposed
cranking
to.
out another Need for Speed right on their own.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Hopefully, I mean, I'm sure it'll go dormant for a while. I mean, it kind of seems like that's what happens just with the IP in general. Like they'll release a 1 or 2 games. Maybe one of them does okay, and the second one is kind of like Unbound. I don't think it really did all that well. They will shelve it for a while, but then, I'm sure it'll come back at some point.
So DBQ, like me, you have played, I think, the entirety of the Need for Speed series in some manner.
Yeah, at least in the last decade. Yep. And I even went back to Unbound a couple months ago and kind of tool around every once in a while. And yeah, I mean, we haven't heard anything from them, so it's not a surprise. Like, I think that the story is less about the website than it is about kind of the state of that franchise. And I think your analysis is accurate in terms of the challenges of modern racing games in terms, well, I mean, that's half of our news story, and the other half shows that they can be successful in certain situations, but EA has definitely struggled with Need for Speed for a long time. It feels really like Rivals at the beginning of the Xbox One, PlayStation 4 franchise, generation was the last time that they really popped, and they've been trying different things over time and have never really climbed back to where they were in the 360 era in terms of Need for Speed.
Very true. Very true. Let's move on to our next news story where we start getting into some of the numbers and metrics of the system. This news story over on GameIndustry.biz by Vicky Blake. Elden Ring Night Rain tops May 2025 US sales, but Monster Hunter Wilds remains year's biggest hit to date US monthly charts. So, Tao, this was your news story that you put in the rundown.
Yeah. So just kind of overall, it looks like year to date spending is about 6% down from 2024, from 21.8 billion. So video game sales in May, just in May, is a little over 4 million, which is actually up 1%. Video game content software sales were almost 4 million, 3.7, up 2%. And then we kind of get these last three are we kind of go into the negatives here. Video games hardware sales, which this is May, so maybe June will be a little bit different. But hardware sales were 172 million, which is down 13% year over year, and game accessory sales down 6%, 154 million, and game sales in general for 2025, 21, almost 22 million. That's once again down minus 6%.
Before you go on to the start talking about the actual titles of the sales, so none of this to me is super surprising. So when you talk about video game sales last year, and I'm not even sure in May that we knew Switch 2 was coming. I mean, it's like every other month for the last like 2 years. It's been on its way, right? But
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we knew it for certainty. That's right. So I think people were still buying Switch games with a year to go. And then hardware wise, this year you have the chilling effect of console prices rising. May was before Days of Play kicked in, which I think gave a surge, right, in terms of these console numbers. And then this year people would have been holding on to their money tight, waiting for the Switch 2 to come out in June. So these aren't super surprising to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's that surprising. One surprise though is Star Wars Battlefront, which re-entered the top 20, coming in at number 12, coming up from 135th place in the previous month. And then just kind of going through I'll just go through the top 10. We had Elden Ring Night Reign number 1, Doom: The Dark Ages number 2, which both of those were new to the charts. Forza Horizon 5 number 3, which we'll talk about here in a second. Number 4 is Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion Remastered. Number 5, Call of Duty Black Ops 6. 6 is MLB The Show 25. Minecraft number 7, still holding up strong there. Number 8 is Grand Theft Auto 5. Number 9, NBA 2K5. And then the number 10, EA Sports FC 25. And then just a little blurb there for MLB The Show and Minecraft. That does not include digital sales from Nintendo, and then also from Xbox for MLB The Show. So those could be possibly a little bit higher, but we don't know that. But yeah, just once again, kind of Minecraft is kind of my surprise. Like people still buying that, still in top 10, but it's just kind of a little bit of a surprise for me. Any surprises on there that you guys saw, DB?
I mean, the jump for Star Wars Battlefront makes sense. We saw record numbers of concurrent players on Steam. They had a couple of different Battlefront 2 weekends and community pushes. So to see that jump back up, I think tying in and leading into our next story, the fact that Forza Horizon 5 was number 2 last month and number 3 this month shows some kind of sustained sales, and mainly on the PlayStation 5 platform.
I mean, there's a ton of stuff to talk about on this entire list, I think. Doom: The Dark Ages being up at number 2 means to me that sold well on PC, sold well on PlayStation 5. And it being present on the Xbox, where I'm just going to make an assumption for the sake of conversation that most people who played it through Game Pass, further reinforces the shift in the Xbox strategy to publish these games right on multiple platforms. I mean, Doom would have always been coming to multiple platforms, but Forza Horizon 5 selling well when you assume that no one on Xbox is buying that game at this point, right? So all of these sales, and in fact, I don't think anybody's buying it on PC at this point. So literally all of these sales, the vast majority of sales of Forza Horizon 5 that put it in this chart are happening on PlayStation 5, where Gran Turismo exists. Now it's a technically good situation with Gran Turismo. You assume that most people who have wanted Gran Turismo have bought it by now. But further shows that there's a healthy market for that game, addressable market for that game on PlayStation, but also that it is not hampered by direct head-to-head competition with Gran Turismo. And this leads to what I think maybe I said on the show, I may have said it on another show, that I'm not by any means praising Xbox for the layoffs of Turn 10, but trying to understand what the future of the Forza series means. I think for them, where it's critical for them to publish games on PlayStation, it's a better tactical situation to be publishing Forza Horizon than to be publishing Forza Motorsport, which would be competing directly head-to-head with Gran Turismo. Elder Scrolls 4, again, on multiple platforms. Call of Duty Black Ops 6, again, on multiple platforms. MLB The Show 25. I haven't been able to track this down, but I was listening to Colin Moriarty on Broken Silicon last week, I think, and Colin mentioned, and again, I haven't been able to track this down in writing. Colin seemed to indicate that MLB The Show 25 is now being published on Xbox by PlayStation, which I don't know if that's true, but if they are, absolutely is part of the causality of MLB The Show no longer being in Game Pass. But regardless, it's not in Game Pass, and now it's at the top of the chart, right, for sales. So lots of shifting dynamics, right, in these sales charts in the industry and the causality behind why some of these titles are winding up there. Good to see Assassin's Creed Shadows on top. super funny that Red Dead Redemption 2, which I've been playing for the last month on the Xbox Series X, is now back on the top of this chart at number 16. F125, when I just talked about Codemasters, right, saying that they weren't doing the Dirt series anymore. The Dirt series doesn't wind up in this chart very often in past history, right? But the F1 series does. Again, maybe giving causality to why they're focusing on that instead of, and not bothering with dirt racing anymore. Helldivers 2 at the top of the chart. I assume we're going to see it remain at the top of the chart when it goes to Xbox in August. Super interesting. The Last of Us Part 2 is up here in the chart because that is probably the remastered version, which I know that there's a lot of angst that game, like that the Last of Us franchise, like keeps getting done, but clearly it's gaining traction because of the television show and people are apparently buying it in droves. So, be mad about it, but it's hard to be mad about it when people are buying it, and that clearly helps, right? The companies who are putting this stuff out. So and then DBQ, of course, funny because I don't have it on the rundown tonight, but I did play PGA Tour 2K25 this week, continuing my season there, and here we are yet again with a game that theoretically is off of everybody's radar, except for people like you and I. But here it is again at the top of the chart. So this whole chart to me is interesting.
I'm sorry. And I think the PGA game you see kind of pop up when you have a major tournament type of thing. Looking on, just to follow up on your MLB The Show, looking on Xbox.com in terms of the store, that it shows the publisher still as MLB for 25.
Okay. Yeah, it's been tough for me to, in fact, like a few of the places I had checked, it was like there's no publisher listed, and I'm like, well, what's going on there? But yeah, it's been tough to track it down. So that's definitely interesting what's going on with that behind the scenes. Okay, so DBQ, you mentioned the next story in the rundown, so let's go ahead and cover that one.
Yeah, let's just hit that real quick because we're already talking about sales and Forza Horizon being number 2 and number 3 on the charts that we just talked about. We have reports coming out of, that Forza Horizon has sold north of 2 million copies on PlayStation 5. And that is what, in the first 2 months of its release here. This article was just a day ago, and some of those reports kind of push it a little higher, closer to 3 million. But again, the fact that the majority, these are all on PlayStation. So this is a new release. It goes to what Game Logic was saying in terms of this franchise finding a space in the kind of more casual racing that really has only existed with the Crew Motors Fest, or whatever the most recent Crew, which is very much a Horizon kind of style game on a PlayStation 5. And so there's a market for it. The other news I grabbed just for comparison's sake to see what does 2 million in the first 2 months look like, and going back to a Game World article from July of 24, talking about how many millions of players that Forza Horizon 5 had, that in the first week it had 10 million players. In the first 7 months it had 20 million players. In 2 years, 2.5 years they hit, so in 24 they hit 40 million players. And again, this is the flip side to this, is a million players makes it feel, 10 million players in a week makes it feel, the 2 million coming off of sales on PlayStation feels relatively small, but the vast majority of these were Game Pass, or it certainly seems like it, that the vast majority of these are Game Pass and the registered users, not necessarily purchases. And so I think that's a place where it goes back to, this is a much larger discussion than tonight, but it goes back to Microsoft's kind of their economic model of, we can make the numbers of engagement look really big on Game Pass, but what does that actually translate into sales and sustained revenue? And where we're hearing Forza being touted as a real success on PlayStation, even if it has sold 2 million, those are full price sales at this point, which is a different kind of, it puts it in a different economic position than just registered Game Pass users.
And engagement, and I think that it's not a direct metric, but I think it's a knock on that feeds to eventual future sales. And I know it's a factor that some people don't like mention and don't like me to mention it, but I'm going to mention it. I think the engagement in the player basis is different, and that counts for something. Playing Death Stranding 6 hours in, I'm popping trophies, and when I see those trophy metrics come up, again, 6 hours into the game, I'm seeing 80% rate of players have achieved that trophy. I was playing Halo Infinite, which again we're going to talk about in the wrap up here tonight. I literally found the first audio log in the campaign, and the percentage of players who had achieved that trophy was 24%. And I'm like, what that's telling me is that a lot of people who accessed the game didn't, right, just toe dipped, right, played an hour or so into it, but didn't bother with certain elements of the game, maybe because they were just trying to like test it, like, and check it. But those types of differences in the demographics, I think, feed into kind of how the monetization tail, right, is going to go on the game and on future, right, releases, and whether or not you're getting people who stay in Game Pass, or whether or not you're seeing a lot of churn, and seeing what the attractiveness is, right, for third parties to put their titles, right. If part of the basis of how third parties get paid is royalty payments based on number of hours of engagement numbers, and then they see right, that they're being told metrics behind the veil that we don't see. But if those metrics are what's the word I want to use? If there's a covariance between those gameplay hours and, say, achievements, then that may mean that people have a skeptical feeling about whether or not they're going to hit those royalty payment numbers, right? And that feeds into the deals that they make. So anyway, anything else on that DBQ, Tao, you guys wanted to cover before we go into the last news story? Okay, last news story, which is also a sales thing. Nintendo Switch eShop charts. This news story over on Nintendo Everything by Brian. Nintendo Switch eShop charts July 13th, 2025. Patapon, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 debut. The latest Nintendo Switch eShop charts for the week of July 13th are now available. The new data is notable as it includes 2 new releases. Patapon 1 and 2. Replay enters the top 10. We also see Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 for the first time. Patapon 1 and 2 is a Bandai Namco published game on Switch. And I think is that PlayStation IP?
Yeah, it's a PlayStation IP. I didn't realize it was a Bandai Namco published game, but
yeah. I mean, and that's
PSP
part of the
game, wasn't it, originally?
Yeah, it was PSP. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's part of the arrangement that's gone on, is that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe PlayStation has given license to Bandai Namco to go publish games on Switch and maybe other platforms, that I would contend, right, but PlayStation isn't like super interested in like making that effort themselves. But it's interesting, right, that it's playing well, right, on other platforms. Just kind of briefly looking at the list and just seeing if there's anything that pops out. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe being at number 2, when and these are Switch and Switch 2 games, right? The chart is now combined, I assume.
I believe so, because many of these things are not Switch 2 compatible. Like Switch Sports is not Switch 2 compatible, so they must be just combined together.
Yeah. So you got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe hitting at number 2, even though we just said, and these the May? No, this is the July chart. So for the week, so Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, even though we have Mario Kart World out, Minecraft popping at number 3, an Xbox published game. Anything else that pops out at you guys? MLB The Show in at number 17.
Yeah, I think the Jamboree number up top potentially ties in the fact that there's a expansion coming to Switch 2 this month,
Okay.
and so seeing that, and it's also Nintendo had a big July sale in the first half, so many of these titles, Jamboree, Odyssey, Bowser's Fury, Switch Sports, all kind of hit the $40 US market in terms rather than 60. So it's kind of potentially you see a boost there to some of those things.
You've got It Takes Two coming in at number 21, even though Split Fiction is available. Yeah, so even though the charts are combined, right, the numbers of Switch 2 out in the wild, even though it sounds like Switch 2 has sold incredibly well in its first month, is nowhere near what the Switch is. So it's probably gonna be a very long time before we see any Switch 2 titles supersede the total numbers of software titles that 150 million people on the Switch, right, are still buying. And that will happen, in as we see that swap over, right, between the consoles. Digital, I'm just trying to see if anything pops differently. System Shock 25th anniversary remaster. I'm not seeing any Switch 2 only titles though. So yeah, interesting stuff. I think it's just a thing to keep an eye on and see how it evolves going forward. Moving on to segment 3, our last section of the show. Remainder of the games that we've been playing, probably at in lesser total amount of time expended than the stuff we cover in segment 1. Tao, you've been hitting up some things on Switch too?
Yeah, I've been going back and playing some of my older titles, just kind of sorted my library through A to Z title, and kind of just working down just a few of them that I wanted to jump out or to pick out. Fire Emblem Warriors, which is the Musu Dynasty Warriors, like using the Fire Emblem characters. I do remember playing that originally on the original Switch. There's a lot of popping. You'd see guys just appear all of a sudden. Obviously this is you have big armies coming at you. But now playing on Switch 2, still a little bit of pop in here and there, but it's a lot more enemies on screen all at once. There's not a lot of pop in. Looks good. I mean, obviously it's not like a remaster or anything, so it still kind of looks like it was on the Switch 2, but it looks a little smoother, looks a little bit cleaner, not so much I don't want to say fog, but you can see further in the distance and stuff like that than you could before. Skyrim, I played that, of course, because why not? It's a new system, so I got to play Skyrim. This is not the I guess it's not a remaster, but they had like I don't know, it was like an upgrade or something that they had not too long ago. This is not that. It's just a regular base Skyrim game. I think they had like one little big update right before that came out, which kind of added some, I think, like fishing and a few other things. But it looks great. It looks good on the Switch too. I was playing a little bit of that, and then Mario Odyssey. That I ended when I stopped playing Mario Odyssey. I was right at Bowser, and I couldn't beat him for whatever reason. And of course, as soon as I came back and played it this time, I was, it took me like a few tries, maybe like 3 tries, but I finally did beat him. And it was just great. I love that game. Like it's just a cool, just kind of throwbacks to past Mario games, and you get the 2D levels that you can do, which you get a little bit of that too at the end where you're actually Bowser. Control him in the 3D and the 2D world. So it's pretty cool. It was a pretty good game. So I finally was able to beat that, at least the basic story, because you can still go back and get more moons if you wanted to. But I probably won't do that. I might jump in it every once in a while. But it was nice just to finally beat that game. It's I think it's been a while since I beat a 3D Mario game. I never beat any of the Galaxies, so it was kind of nice to finally finish that one off.
Okay. The other things I've been playing, I did grab a PlayStation Portal, and first thing I have been checking out.
Did you pick it up on the discount during Amazon Prime days, or did you buy it used or new?
No, I bought it new, and I bought it locally because I was trying to get it delivered like same day. I saw that like a lot of the discounts they had were like for used ones, which I just didn't want to do.
Yeah. Yep.
So and since it's Ghost of Yote week, I decided I would go back and check out Ghost of Tsushima, which it's been really enjoyable, kind of coming off of the Call of Duty grind and getting a chance to like hit some things in my backlog. So and because I'm off that Call of Duty grind again, as I mentioned last week, I'm a lot more attentive to like elements of the story and paying attention to things that are going on. Uh, Ghost of Tsushima has been wonderful, right? As a game, getting back into that. Um, the PlayStation Portal is fine. I haven't really had an opportunity to really put it in a use case that really makes it feel like that there's like more consumer instant gratification in the purchase. I've been at home, so I've played it like in my upstairs office and on the main floor. I think like in the immediate future, one of the things that will make me enjoy it more is doing exactly that. And I didn't really play it in my upstairs office. I set it up and configured it because I was like in an audit and an inspection all day the day that it got delivered. But I think that use case will provide a lot of value for me where I moved my office upstairs to get it out of here of the game room to keep the distraction level down. But I think if I take the portal up there in the morning when I go to work in my 50-yard commute right up the two flights of stairs, it'll be nice to like work and then if I play 30 minutes right of Ghost of Tsushima over lunch, that's a neat thing. The portal, using the Switch in handheld mode and the Steam Deck are really kind of becoming these I use the term chip tunes, right? Kind of devices, meaning that they are things that are primarily I'm using to kind of like chip away at games in the backlog. Um, so yeah, and it looks good. Like the the visuals that games render with on the portal are gorgeous, right? On that screen, pretty close to your face, using the DualSense controllers on either side, has been neat. The other thing I've been playing, putting a significant amount of time in, is going back and playing the Halo Infinite campaign, because on that game I was all about the multiplayer. I played a little bit of the campaign to start, and then I just quickly jumped ship, in the same way that I do for Call of Duty to get into the competitive multiplayer. So it's been fun. Boss takedowns, I've been chewing through them a lot more quickly. Had a session Sunday where like it really surprised me, but like I did it as a let's play, but in an hour, as I was making like the show notes for the let's play, I was like, oh, I went and found like this squad and like took down this boss and found this Mjolnir locker. Like I did like it. I got through like a half dozen like different like mini events and missions within the span of an hour. I'm like, oh, this is good. Like the pacing, I'm chewing through this. So I don't think I'm necessarily going to 100% it, but I'm approaching it in a way of like just like not bypassing as much as I might have before on the map. I do have a question in my head about like, will history show that in later in years we will decide that we were kind of harsher on the Halo Infinite campaign than I think it sits in a lot of people's memories right now. I being there at the outset, I just experienced like a lot of the things that you would have played the Halo story for, right? The flourishes of the original soundtrack and these moments in the game where like you hear like the big drums beating as you're going into like a major thing. I think there was some recency in terms of the bad showing that it initially had, a lot of bad taste that were in people's mouth of it not coming out when in their minds it should have. So I'm wondering if this game is gonna kind of live on in people's memories, and when they hit in their backlog in a better state than they originally experienced it, which is kind of how I'm feeling about it now. I never had a problem with the campaign when I originally played it. I just didn't feel that like religious need to play the campaign over the multiplayer. Which you would think people who have heavy Halo nostalgia would have felt compelled to play the single player campaign. So, and then Tao, you were the last person with something additional you've been playing, also in your backlog.
Yeah, real quick. Last Nintendo Switch 2. Well, I guess it's a regular Switch 2, but Pokemon Violet. Been playing along at that. Finally beat the story, at least on the base game. I haven't got the DLC yet. I'm gonna hopefully do that soon. But so when I first beat it, they give you, some, I don't know, some rigmarole story that, oh, hey, you can go back and beat, all the gyms again if you want. Like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But since I started playing on Switch 2, I was like, all right, let me go do. I had some pretty powerful Pokemon that I had been leveling up before I stopped playing. After I beat the first round of the gym leaders and school headmaster or whatever she was. So I went back and I was able to go through and just kind of, run through them real quick. And then once you do that, then you can go into a tournament that you do, which actually you can go into the tournament now, like anytime you want. You just go back and to the school and you can go into the tournament, but you have to do at least the one time, which is part of the story. So I was able to do that once again. They gave me a little bit of more trouble. I had to use half my team almost pretty much exclusively, which I think when I was beating the gym leaders, I think I only ever used one Pokemon because they were just so high level. But they did give me quite a run for my money in the tournament. So, but I was able to beat that, and then it just picks like random players that you already played or like trainers throughout the game, and you just fight them again. So I was able to do that, and so I finally finished the story mode. So I'm good with that. I'm just trying to find shinies now. I think I mentioned that too last week. So still haven't found one. I don't know. I've played this game. I got ungodly amount of hours. I still haven't found one yet, even though it's supposed to be a lot better now because there's a lot more Pokemon since you're on the Switch 2 that render on the screen. But I haven't had any luck yet. And I see people like, they just trip over them now, but I haven't had that luck. But yeah, I'm just glad I was able to beat it finally.
All right. DBQ, was there anything else you had in the
No, spending most of my time in football. So
Okay, last thing we want to cover is the significant releases this week. Ready or Not, which we've talked about on the show before. It's the spiritual successor to SWAT 4, which is super interesting because Ken Levine has been in news a lot this week. Ken Levine was actually I think he was the executive producer, because he was still at Irrational Games / Looking Glass Studios, who produced this game as one of the last major muscle movements in what had originally been like Sierra Online and some of its downstream studios and whatnot. I think Sierra Online. I may have that mixed up, but also just Looking Glass, right, coming out of like the lineage of like the Thief series, and games that they went on to do. That game is coming to console this week. And shows up tomorrow. Now that game has been getting good reviews on console. I think better than it got on PC. From the Steam community. So this may actually be a thing for console players to jump onto. Heavily procedural. It's going to take you a good chunk of time to get through a mission. But on PC, what I was most impressed by was how much there was a very robust community around that, and a lot of like prior military people, actual law enforcement people, who really were into kind of like the procedural requirements rate of the game. I'm not sure that you're going to get as much of that on console, but it'll be interesting to see just kind of what the community buildup is around the thing. Donkey Kong Bonanza. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the show, coming out July 17th. Everybody probably looking forward to that. And one that I didn't originally have in the script because I had completely forgotten about it, but Eric's Home, The Stolen Dream, which has been at the Future Games Show both 2024 and 2025, is one of those shows that I talked about earlier in the recent weeks. That please don't forget that a lot of things that we saw during Summer Game Fest, Future Games Show, Wholesome Games, like all that stuff that we saw in June, are games that are actually coming out in July and August and September. And definitely remember to wishlist them, put them on a watch list, frequently go back and revisit like when those release dates are, because a lot of them were like it's coming out this year, but they didn't put a date down. But these are things like I think we need to keep an eye on. Eric's Home coming out tomorrow as well on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC. Visually and graphically, like a very impressive game. I'm very interested to see what happens when this game gets into people's hands. On so far on review lists, it has been doing well on PlayStation 5. On PlayStation 5, its Metacritic is 88 right now. On PC, it's only 77. It's not unusual to see a game get kind of harsher reviews on PC because the PC space is I think, very demanding. Particularly for games like this that are like in a specific genre type that thrives on PC. When it's on consoles and it's in a genre that maybe isn't as prolific, it can tend to do better. And the wait remains to be seen because I haven't dug into this. This is a UE5 game, I'm pretty sure. So it may also be where there's frame rate stutters are a problem on PC, that don't exist on the consoles. But we'll find that out tomorrow. I think when there more reviews show up, it gets into the Steam community users' hands, and we see some of that feedback and telemetry. Anything else on new releases that you guys have seen besides the 3 that I mentioned that are major?
I'll just the fact that we are not mentioning the fact that there's a Destiny DLC that comes out tomorrow, so it just shows where we are at within that game as well. So
yes, that did not trip my current threshold meter on major release. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for everybody who happened to Enate in the chat. Thanks so much for swinging by the live show, Enate. We appreciate you. Hopefully, you'll get a chance to go back and listen to the rest of the show. Although you may have been lurking, I know that you're on night shift now, so we appreciate that as well. So, for anybody who happens to come by and watch the archive version of this in the video on demand on the YouTube channel, we appreciate you. For anybody who happened to be here checking out the live stream, we appreciate you as well. Please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just receive a notification whenever we post new content. We will be back next week at the regular time on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So please feel free to drop by and watch us then. 77 people watched last week, so we appreciate that. We are not really about the numbers here. That's not the way we kind of craft the discussion. But it is super interesting when we see that there are people interested in the show. I think hopefully we provide a refreshing perspective and look that is not as platform centric as most other podcasts are, and don't really kind of hyper focus on which platform is better or who should be punished because of the way that they're treating it in the media and things like that. So I'm not saying that those things are wrong or bad, just saying that that's not a core tenet of this show, and hopefully it provides people a respite, an oasis, if seeing that much of that content constantly throughout the week kind of wears on you. So until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe out there, play the games that you like, come here to talk to us about the games that you love. Once again, my name has been Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, one of the co-hosts here on the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, with my co-host DBQ Hams and Towmaster. Next week, Towmaster will be the host, while DBQ and I fly co-pilot. So until next time, take care of yourselves. Good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.